Excellent. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone who's joined us. Thank you so much for joining the first KEO webinar. Really excited to have two of our fantastic members here. And inshallah, we're going to have a really power hour of learning and practical tips ahead. But before we do, I wanted to introduce our two guests. And what I find really interesting is apart from the financial industry, they also share a couple of really interesting traits of reinventing what they do within the industry and how they translate that to adding value to the people in their audience. So we start with Shabbar. Shabbar and I go back way, way back. Shabbar, it's been a really interesting journey you've been on. And I know in recent years under Lumos Financial and the wealth coaching, you've reinvented yourself from being the financial advisor to someone who goes into the more holistic side and takes people on that journey and gives them the awareness so that they know how that advice is going to translate into their life choices. So Shabbar, give us a little intro, a couple of line intro. What I want you to focus on is your why. What made you change into the direction you did, and how are you giving value back to people?
Okay, well, I wasn't expecting that sort of deep and meaningful question to kick things off. Jeez.
I'm glad you're
Um,
first, Shabba.
I know.
I'm
No,
glad you're first, mate.
at least you
Got to
can
keep you
prep
on your toes, my friend.
the philosophical answer. I mean, for me, it really goes back to I'm a financial advisor by profession, so naturally, I'm sort of in the money space. But just my own journey made me realize through experiences that it's not really about the money. It never is. The money is just a tool, and we're either stressed, worried, or happy, or we have these emotions that are tied to a particular number. And it's quite interesting when we get budgets and things that have occurred in the news that might affect our number going up and down. We internally start to feel differently. So I've just sort of made it my mission that I want to sort of like try and connect the two. So Lumos Financial is my regulated financial advice business where I talk to people about pensions and retirement planning and all of this sort of stuff. And then more recently, Mind Your Wealth is where we're now sort of focusing on money mindset and our sort of relationship with money. Because the money is only as good as it can help us to achieve certain things. It's not to it's not the end, it's a means to an end. So that's my sort of like personal philosophy around all of this stuff. Yes, I've got to talk about investments and pensions and capital gains tax and all of that stuff, but I don't actually personally think that people are too interested in that. What they want to know is how is this going to translate into me having a better life, and being able to achieve the things that I want for me and my loved ones. So I don't know if that sort of answers your question, but yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for the share. And so I think sort of the one-liner is you've gone from just focusing on the tools or letting people focus on the tools to actually understanding how those tools are going to come into their life and change their trajectory. And I think that's fantastic. We've often talked about the bucket and the holes. That's my favorite story from you. I've still got that on my whiteboard in the office. So, and I'm sure we'll get a chance to get to that in a bit. But no, thank you for the intro. And Reza, coming on to yourself. So Reza, again, we go back way, way back, and it's been fantastic watching your journey and how you've grown out of your accountant shell, shall we call it? So I think there's some real mastery in your own business, and then you've taken that mastery and started creating a following of accountants and helping them to also go up the ladder of mastering their own business, getting control of their own time, making more effective decisions to make a more efficient business journey, and ultimately getting that real entrepreneurial, I don't want to call it balance, but the lifestyle that we're all striving towards. So yeah, again, same question to yourself. We're really interested in the why, what took you from accountant to becoming a coach, a sort of knowledge giver, someone who's sort of helping people see that light. And now, what's the journey forward for you?
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Samir. Again, not a question I was expecting, but we'll hit it nonetheless. Now, without going in too deep into the backstory, I kind of fell into accountancy. So it wasn't something that I had a vision that that's what I wanted to do. But in all honesty, I've never done an honest day's accounting in my life. I still haven't prepared a tax return or a set of accounts. For me, the the business was more important. For me, it was the thrill of I just wanted to be in business. I wanted to run my own business. And at PwC, I knew it would take me 10 years to get to partner, which I didn't really want to wait to do. So the opportunity came for me to buy a traditional practice, accounting practice. And I thought, okay, fine. Well, how hard it can be to run a practice. I've trained at PwC, so surely it can't be that difficult. But actually, it was very difficult because when you do your accountancy training, they don't teach you how to run a business. Nobody teaches you how to win clients. Nobody teaches you how to price your services. Nobody teaches you how to lead and manage a team. So I went on a journey of actually learning things the hard way, wasting time, money, making mistakes. And then I came across the realization that there was this whole world out there of self-development, of people who had been there and done it and were then sharing their knowledge, wisdom, and experience with other people a few steps behind them. So I started to learn from others, other accountants who had scaled their business and exited. I started to go on this journey about learning about sales, marketing, pricing. And then that led to the transformation of my results and got my practice to actually run as a business. So most accountants, they're employed and then they set up their own firm and they still remain that technician where they're still busy in the doing and they're overworked and ultimately underpaid. Essentially, it's a glorified job. And that's what I help accountants now with, because I went through that hard journey of learning the hard way, realizing that actually, this is not what I bought this business for. I bought this business to have a business that gave me that time and financial freedom that I really wanted. So I went on a journey of building those business skills and got my practice to run without me. So now the team run it. And I then started to share what I'd learned with other accountants. And through that, started building new skills of digital marketing, social media, coaching, mentoring, that sort of thing. And found that actually I really enjoy that kind of thing. That gives me a buzz, that gives me a thrill. It's the highest point of leverage for me because I've been there and done it. I can really relate to the challenges that other practice owners face, and I can help them with getting to where they went to. So it kind of gives me that huge satisfaction. Still learning, and to my biggest advice, and what I say to my kids is, you can't start early enough. Go and start. Read the books, consume the podcasts, the YouTube videos about business, about sales and marketing, because these are the skills that you need these days to build a business. And that's something that I believe all of our, we have this, and this is typical in all Asian communities, right? That our generation were told, go to university, become doctor, become engineer, become accountant. But actually, we need to change the narrative now because look, economy is changing, UK is changing, the world is changing, and life is tough. And if you're an employed person, life is hard. Life is only going to get harder. So we need to aspire to actually be the ones that are creating jobs, not having jobs. And I think the more we talk about these things, the more we showcase other people in terms of what they're doing. Lots of great entrepreneurs in our community, bringing them to the forefront. And what you're doing with the KEO group, fantastic. The more we talk about these things and have the youngsters aspiring to ultimately become entrepreneurs and business people, that can only be good for our younger generation, our community going forward. Sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent.
Oh, that's awesome. No, thank you so much for sharing. And look, I think one of the reasons I reached out to both of you, and I wanted to sort of ask you both to give your thoughts on this as we started, because I feel you both have a fantastic sense of purpose, and that purpose has led to innovation and rocking up your industries. And also the way you advise, the way you interact, and I think that's superb. And the energy you're bringing is fantastic. So, I think for a topic like today, for me, it's always important to ask why. Why would I bring who I bring onto the panel? And the importance is that sense of purpose and innovation, hopefully, takes us on a journey of practicality. And for our audience, please feel free to ask questions, ask away. I know both Reza and Shabbar are very keen on making this a very practical and interactive session. So do shoot those questions through. So look, before we dive in, I know we've talked the budget to death and we've had analysis and summaries after summaries. What I wanted to do is just 4 or 5 minutes from each of you, if you could just give me your overall assessment. So we're not going into the nitty-gritties of it, but just what was your feel from why the budget is what it was, and what's your sort of feeling as to where it's going. So we'll reverse order this time. And Reza, if we can start with yourself.
So I was just typing a message to you, Shabbar. Sorry, Zamir. Your message only went to hosts and panelists in the chat. So if you just
thank you.
update that and click everyone.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
No worries. So remind me what was the question?
No
The
problem
update,
at
right?
all.
A short update on the budget
Yeah. So
as
look,
it's coming.
basically, in summary, what we're looking for is not the nitty-gritties, but what was your take? What was your feel for the budget? Why it was what it was, where it's going, and just a quick overview from yourself.
Okay, sure, no problem. But before I do, I'm still, very disappointed no one said hello in the chat box or said alaikum salam or salam in the chat box. So come on, I encourage you guys, you're here, you're listening, engage in the chat box. And what I want you to do is put your questions in the chat box as well, because there's no point us droning on about random stuff that isn't relevant to you that you can just catch up on YouTube or somewhere else. So, let's make it relevant. What do you want to know? We're here for you for the next, 50 minutes or so. So put in the chat box, what questions do you have? And also, what are you? Are you a business owner? Are you employed? So that we know, are you self-employed? So we know where to kind of take the conversations and highlight the stuff in the budget that's important. So I encourage you now, be brave. Just say salam in the chat box where you are based and say, and just for your profile, are you business owner? Are you employed? Are you self-employed? Are you a student? Those three things in the chat box right now, whilst I kind of give an overview of the budget. So I guess this budget was the highest tax raising budget in a very long time, I think ever. So clearly there's a huge black hole in the UK finances. And they had to raise a lot of money because they've spent a lot of money and there has been mismanagement, which unfortunately has been the case for the UK for a while now and only going to get worse. So they had to raise £40 billion. That was a black hole. And so Madam Rachel Reeves had to come up with ideas of how she's going to do that. And with the manifesto promises, they couldn't really increase taxes for employed people. So they couldn't really increase income tax. They couldn't increase VAT. They couldn't increase employees' national insurance. So the brunt had to come from ultimately business owners, property investors, people with wealth, etc. So unfortunately, the people who are hit the hardest have been business owners, property investors, to-be property investors, and people with high net worth and assets. So overall, in terms of if you look at the big changes that's going to raise the most amount of money was employers' national insurance. And that's going to, in their estimation, raise half of that 40 billion black hole. So half of the 40 billion, 20 billion is going to come from that 1.2% increase in employers' national insurance. So it was 13.8%, it's going up to 15%. So employers' national insurance, just very quickly, if you're unaware, employers' national insurance is the tax that you have to pay on your employees' wages. So you pay your employees an amount, let's say you pay someone £20,000 a year, you've got to pay employers' national insurance, you've got to pay 15% now of their wages minus tax-free allowance on to the government as employers' national insurance. So cumulatively across if you've got lots of employees, if you run a business where you are employing lots of people. Now I don't know what businesses we have here in the audience, so let me know if you run a business, what business are you in? Because if you are a one-man band, this is not really going to be relevant to you. If you run a care home or you run a pharmacy or you run a cafe, then this is going to be very relevant to you because your real cost, your direct cost is going to shoot up massively because of this. Not only that, but minimum wage went up as well. So again, another kick in the teeth for business owners that not only do we pay more now on employers' national insurance, but minimum wage is going up as well. And that has a knock-on effect. It's only going to cause wage inflation even more. So we had, we had direct wage inflation in the pandemic. Now we've got, even more wage inflation going to go on, which is only going to impact margins, etc., for business owners who employ people. So they were the big ones. The others were for capital gains tax. So that was another one. So if you have assets and you sell assets at a gain, you pay capital gains tax. And the capital gains tax rates have now been more aligned with not quite income tax rates, but the rates that apply to residential property. So previously you could sell an asset which wasn't property and you would pay after your allowance 10% and then 20% if you're a higher rate. That's been now aligned with the property tax rates of 18% and 28%. If you sell a business, you used to be able to pay 10% tax after, for that £1 million lifetime limit. Now that's going up to 14% in April of next year. So that's another one to be wary of. Stamp duty has gone up for property investors. So if you own a buy-to-let, or if you want to buy another buy-to-let, or you want to buy through your company, there used to be a 3% surcharge. Now that surcharge has gone to 5%. So even more tax. From April next year, they're also bringing in bans. So you're going to pay even more stamp duty based upon the bans that are changing from April 2025. So ordinarily, let's say a £200,000 property, 3% surcharge would have been £6,000. That is going up to 11,000 based on the changes of the surcharge and the bans from next April. So again, making it even harder for landlords, for buy-to-let investors, or just making it more costly to landlords to buy additional properties. And lastly, I think I'll keep it there, and then we can invite questions or hand over to Shabbar. And this one has a crossover with Shabbar as well, in terms of the inheritance tax now being due on pension funds. So previously, the value of your pension was outside of your estate for inheritance tax purposes. Now they're bringing it into your estate for inheritance tax purposes, which is huge because inheritance tax is 40%. So you've been building up your pension pot, thinking that, okay, I will be able to draw down on my pension. What if I don't use? It will go down to my beneficiaries and it will escape IHT. No longer the case. It is now going to be subject to inheritance tax. So that's a huge one, and Shabbar will talk about that in more detail. But yeah, in a nutshell, that was kind of the headline in terms of the major tax changes that are relevant mainly for kind of business owners, high net worth individuals, that I think would, of relevance to us in the audience today.
Awesome, thank you. That's a super summary, and I think that's given us the highlights on things we'll then deep dive into later. But Shabbar, bringing yourself in. So look, Reza's given us a good overview. On the ground, so you're dealing with, I'm sure you are dealing with businesses as well, but primarily you're dealing with a lot of individuals, high net worth, or people who who have excess finance and want to use it in a way that's going to help their trajectory going forward. What have the fears been coming through on your side? That'll be really interesting to understand those perceptions coming back. And is there any misunderstandings on the ground as well? Because I know that there is a lot of heavy stuff that's come through that's going to impact us. But is there any misunderstandings you've noticed as patterns coming through that need to be addressed?
Before I answer that question, just to sort of one of the things that I think is really important for people to realize are the stealth taxes. And this is, like, you'll hear the term fiscal drag, like, what the hell's fiscal drag, right? But basically for the last decade, you'd have noticed that more and more people are now paying higher levels of tax. And this is because of something really sneaky. And this is the thing that annoys me the most. Forget tax rises. It's the fact that whilst we see inflation and everything around us gets more expensive, wages naturally do go up, not in line with inflation, but nonetheless, wages do go up. And now more and more of us are getting caught in higher tax bands because those bands haven't moved in line with inflation. And that's a really, really pervasive way of taxing us all more. So whilst we say that, Reza was alluding to, there haven't been any like direct personal taxation levies on the employed population. But the fact now that, these bands haven't moved for the last decade, and I think they were announced that they will start to link them to inflation from, I think, is it 2030 or 2028? I can't quite remember. We'll start to get some movement in our personal allowance, which is the amount that you can earn tax free, and hopefully then the high rate tax band will move up. But this is something that we're all getting caught out on. And yeah, it's just a very sneaky way of still taxing the employed population. So we are actually paying more taxes in employees. That's for sure. So circling back to your question, it was around what the fears and worries that I see from a lot of clients.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think, you see, like Reza was saying, that there's very few levers that can be pulled, you know, when there's a black hole, and we can sort of go into why there was, you know, the black hole, and, you know, why can we print so much money during, you know, times, you know, when the government wants to print money, but yet, you know, when it's trying to deal with, you know, home issues, there isn't the money to sort of to deal with them, or the support that, you know, our businesses and sort of underprivileged would dearly welcome. And I think it's small business owners who, you know, are on that sort of line of, you know, the extra cost for, you know, employers NI, you know, on the median salary. So you're looking at the median salary in the UK, which is sort of the halfway between the lowest and the highest salary. So what sits right in the middle is about 35,000. And I believe that the national insurance increase is going to make the extra cost on that employee £1,000 per employee for a business owner. Now, you know, small businesses whose margins are tight, they've been squeezed recently with, you know, rises in corporation tax and employers NI going up, supply costs, etc. You know, everything's against them. That's quite a hard thing to sort of to swallow, really. So small businesses are being squeezed, and I think that there is a genuine fear that a lot of business owners might find it very difficult to go forward, and they can't expand. To expand, you need to generally take on more staff, and then with these costs going up, so there is fear and worry, and fear and worry, you know, breeds more fear and worry. And again, so, you know, coming back to sort of money mindset and psychology, it's sort of like almost self-fulfilling prophecy. Like when you start to worry and get anxious, things generally do end up turning out that way. A lot of people now are worried about their sort of legacy wealth around the pensions. So a lot of my clients, that's really where I'm focused. So CGT, capital gains tax going up, that's a real blow for people that didn't have property. So when you've got money in what we would call non-tax exempt wrappers, so not your pension, your ISA, but stuff that sits outside, you know, first of all, the amount that you can make before you get taxed is very punitive. It's like £3,000 per individual, which is not a lot. And, you know, that gain can easily be swallowed up quite quickly. And then above that, now you're going to be paying 18 or 24%. So, you know, people who are relying on their investments to fund their retirement, well, they're going to be taking a hit on that when they start withdrawing it, because inevitably there'll be gains. So, you know, people are getting squeezed in that respect. And then, you know, passing money on to like, you know, the next generation who are in a much more tighter position because they haven't been able to, you know, build wealth in the same way as the baby boomers have. Now that those pensions are going to be taxed. Although what I would say is that I've been trying to tell my clients that we're very quick to anchor ourselves to what's happened previously. So we're always, you know, in psychology, especially with money, you know, when a price has been established and then the price moves away, suddenly we feel like a real loss, and that loss is very emotionally damaging. Whereas we ignore what it was previously. So we may have had a situation where in for example, the inheritance tax for pensions, before George Osborne created pension freedom in 2015, the death tax on pensions was actually higher than the inheritance tax rate. It was 55%. But what's happened is we've now anchored to this new world in 2015 onwards, where it was like free. All right, I can leave it now for free. And now we've reverted back. People are forgetting the fact that, well, actually, it was 55%. So it wasn't always the convention that pensions were IHT. Now, I would love it if pensions were, you know, it makes the planning a lot easier, less complicated. You can pass on wealth. It's a great transferring mechanism from this generation to the next. But we do create this emotional tension by, oh, look what's happened. And it is, yeah, it's not nice, but we're always anchored to what's happened in the recent past and forgetting that actually, yeah, it was 55%. So things like that, I try and sort of get that message across to clients, you know, just to provide some sort of silver lining. But also, you know, with with certain situations with the budget now, I'm looking at the opportunities to say, well, okay, you know, the inheritance tax situation isn't great, and that opens opportunity now for us to change the way we look at our money, and rather than passing it on death, maybe we can start to give whilst we're alive. And that's a fantastic and a beautiful opportunity to give with a warm hand rather than a cold one. And that could be more charitable endeavors. It could be helping the next generation when they need it, as opposed to when mum and dad, you know, are put 6 feet under. So there are some positive conversations that can come out of what's happened, but we are clutching at straws. I do have to admit that.
Fantastic. So look, I think you're right. There's going to be things we can and can't do within the boundary of working. But I love what you're saying about our outlook and our mindset first adapting to the change, and understanding that there's going to be these backs and forths in our life trajectory, where you're going to have periods of, you know, good tax incentives and not such good. But I love what you said at the end there. It's like planning in your lifetime, which is quite an Islamic value as well to do, not leaving it until, you know, the traditional way of thinking, which is the benefit will come later. Why not help each other as we go? So I love that as a starting point. So look, I think there's a few areas that we can go into, and I wanted to start with businesses. So we have a number of small business owners through the KEO network. From both of you, what sort of tips and practical thoughts would you ask small business owners? Now, I realize we're going to have different industries with different considerations, and if there are any sort of specific pointers for those industries, please feel free to share. But where would you start as a business owner?
Reza, you're
That's me.
yeah, that's you, man.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
okay.
was
I've got one thing that I'll circle back to
Yeah,
at the end,
sure.
but I think
please.
I think you lead on that.
Cool.
No worries, no worries. All right, well, let me just make it a little bit engaging. I'll get my flip chart out here, electronic flip chart. Let's do some doodles, some squiggles, because I can't see your questions coming through in the chat. So until they do, we're just going to give you an overview and keep talking, but we're happy to make this very relevant and answer your most pressing questions. If you just get off the fence and put them in the chat box, we're happy to answer you. But otherwise, let's look at typical. I'm going to take a business owner scenario, and I'm going to share with you what I'm doing personally, what I advise clients to do. So this is not just theoretical stuff. This is real world, what an accountant would do himself to be really tax efficient, right? So let's take the scenario. I'm guessing, I don't know, but I'm guessing most of you, maybe you've got your own UK company here, right? You've got a trading business, all right? And you know, maybe you are the shareholder, and your good wife or husband is the other shareholder as well. Okay, so in terms of what happens, you know, you make money, your profits go into the company, then you extract them via kind of salary and dividends to yourself. If you've got a good accountant, they've probably informed you what the best way of taking that is. Usually it is, you know, salary of around 12K, and then the balance in dividends up to sort of the basic rate band, which is just over 50K. If there's two of you, taking 100K salary between you, and then anything else above that is going to be taxed at the higher income tax rates of 38, 39% upwards. So that's typical to kind of the scenario. In terms of anything we can do on that front, well, you know, the more that there's this employer's allowance, which has gone up now. So even though the employers NI has now shot up to 15%, if it is kind of you just family members in the company, then, you know, take your salaries, and as long as there's more than one of you, you can claim this, you know, tax free, it's a 10K employment allowance now. And what that is the amount that you don't have to pay in national insurance. So if your employer's national insurance bill is less than 10K, then you won't pay any. But that only applies if you've got more than one employee on your books. So if there's just you, get somebody else employed, pay them a small salary over 5K, and you'll qualify for this employer's allowance. Now, who can you employ? Anyone who's going to help you with a business. Now, if you've got Children, you can also employ your kids. If they're over 13 and they're doing something for the business, you can employ your kids, so long as you can justify what you're paying them and what they're doing. So, for example, I've got 2 kids on the payroll. I have 4 in total. I'm waiting for the others to get to 13. I'll let them want to. But my elder boys get paid a salary. What do? They help me with social media stuff. They do a bit of research for me. I can justify paying them salaries of, say, anywhere between 5K and 10K based upon what they're doing for me. Benefit of that, corporation tax deduction, also claiming that the 10K employment allowance. Obviously, spouse is also on there as well. So again, what you're doing here is you're working within the tax system. Of course, you've got to be able to justify that there is some contribution, of course, from those individuals that you are employing in order to meet the satisfactory test for tax purposes, which is that they are wholly and exclusively being paid for the benefit of the business. So there's
Reza, can I ask you a quick question? It might be the HR hat. When we're talking about this sort of thing, so if we go into an evidentiary mindset, yeah, what would you need to sort of evidence this on paper, even from an accounting point of view? Say you were questioned, would it be like putting a JD together? Would it be like tracking tasks? Just a on a simple basis.
Yeah, so I guess the basics would be an employment contract. So if you've got a contract, just use someone like Simply ER to generate your contracts very easily for you. And again, give them a contract and tell them what the hourly rate is going to be, etc., just like you would for a normal employee. If for your other employees, you're not requiring them to log tasks or anything like that, then you wouldn't really need to for the say family members you're employing. But there's got to be some demonstrations. Let's say, for example, if there's some emails back and forth, or you've got, a WhatsApp chat set up of stuff that they are doing, or you can demonstrate that, you've had emails from them, they've done a bit of research, they've sent you it, or they've edited your videos and they've sent it back. There's some kind of trail log, there's an audit log that if you had to, you could go back and say, look, this, I gave my son my videos to edit, for example, and you can see here there is a trail of him sending them back to me. So clearly he's been working on them from the moment I sent them to him. Maybe I've added him onto my Notion workspace. Notion is what I use to collaborate between my team members. So I've added him on there and I tag him when something needs editing, and then he comes back to me. So there is some sort of evidence backed there in terms of the duties they're carrying out.
Awesome. Thank you.
So that's kind of on that front. What else can we do to be tax efficient? So something else we can do is you've got a UK company over here, right? And you're making good money, you're making profits in here. When you take them out, you're going to be clobbered, right, with income tax. So if you're going to take out more than that 100K, you're going to start to go into those 38% or 40% bands, depending upon, whether it's dibs or whether it's salary, etc. The problem of going over 100K is that when you take personal income between 100 and 125K, your effective tax rate jumps to something like 62% between that band. And the reason is because they start to taper away your personal allowance, which is the 12,570. So you can see double that equals that. So it's for every £2 you go over and above the 100K, you lose £1 of your personal allowance. So when you get to 125K of personal income, you've lost this. So basically, you're essentially this figure is going into that 40% bracket. So you're paying this is moving into that 20% basic rate bracket, and therefore you're paying the 20 plus the 40, you're getting to that 62%. So that's why where possible, we want to remain within the 100K bracket for individual income. Otherwise, you start to pay crazy amounts of tax. So something else we can do then, in terms of when we get to those, let's say the only reasons we would need to potentially, unless you've got a really extensive lifestyle where you need to take more than 100K, let's say between 2 people in the business, most people usually are not in that, and they've got the funds, but they want to reinvest those funds, let's say, into property. So they want to take out those funds and invest. And if you took out more than the 100K, let's say you needed a deposit to invest into property, you were paying crazy amounts of tax. So a good structure to follow here is, rather than having to take out money from the business and pay these crazy amounts of tax, what you do is you put a holding company on top, right? put a holding company on top of your trading company. So this becomes your trading company, and this becomes a holding company. And the benefit of that is when you send up dividends, right, into a holding company, what happens is that they become, I'll use a different color here, tax-free. Yay. So dividends, they go up to holdco, tax-free. So you get money in here, you haven't paid tax, because dividends from one company to another company are not subject to tax, because you've already paid the corp tax here. So you're not having to pay the corp tax again over here. It's already been taxed. And if you're not taking it out, it sits there. So then what you can then do with those funds is you can reinvest it in a tax efficient way. So what you do is the holdco then sets up a subsidiary called, say, Propco. And it's the Propco that then goes out and buys these houses. So what happens is the holdco then sends those dividends that you have hived up into your war chest over here. So holdco funds Propco with essentially the deposits, which is then able to be used to buy these properties. So what you're doing there, you're facilitating the reinvestment of the profits that you're earning in here, tax-free, without suffering income tax. So you're able to buy these properties without having to take out money personally. So you spend 100K of profit in here. Yes, you pay a corporation tax. So corp tax is always going to be paid. Goes up to holdco and then goes down into propco and then buys your property. So that's a good little structure to have within your armory in order to be able to have kind of tax, to be tax efficient, because you're not losing then tax to the taxman if you wanted to just use those funds for reinvestment. And lastly, the other thing you want to have in your armory, actually, there's probably a few things. So what I want to talk to you about is, another thing is, let's say, grandparents' trust. So I don't know if who is around that, if there's any grandparents here in the audience, shout out, because this might be relevant to you. The other thing you might want to consider is SAS pensions, which I'm sure Shabbar can talk about as well, but that's something that is in our armory that I think you should have in yours. And lastly, what was the other thing I want to talk about? There's two. Yeah, maybe LLP for running cars. Okay, that might be an interesting one for you. So let's take SAS pensions in part of the corporate structure. SAS pension again, very okay. Now IHT has been a bit of a annoyance on that, but you've got your UK company. You're making profits in here. You're paying corp tax on it. It's going up now. You're going to be paying 25, nearly 26.5% after 50K and whatnot. So most of your profits are going to be taxed at these higher rates. It's still quite tax efficient to put money into your pension, because you can put in 60K per year per person, and you can go back to the last 3 years and you save corporation tax. So for every, say, 60K contribution, you're saving, say, 25%, so a quarter of that. So you put a contribution in and you're saving 15K tax, corporation tax, which is still quite tax efficient. And then what you can do with your SAS pension, we like SAS pensions because we're in control. The difference between a SAS pension and, let's say, another pension that you might have to pay into with your employer is that you're in control of the underlying investments. So I can go away, I'm in control, I'm trustee, I can go away and I can buy property, commercial, not residential. I can buy commercial property with those funds. So something which quite a lot of what we do, our clients have done, is that you actually hold your trading property through your SAS pension. So you fund your pension through profits in the company, and then the SAS then uses those to buy up your commercial property from you. And then any rent flowing into the pension is also tax-free. So it becomes quite a nice little arrangement. But I appreciate I've gone on quite a bit. So what I'll do is I'll pause there now, because I know Shabbar is looking at me and he's giving me evils. So I'm thinking, no, Shabbar, you need to come in now. And I know you want to. I feel bad for taking over the show. So Shabbar, please
no,
do
listen, you carry on, and flex your artistic talents, because this is
Reza,
fantastic.
This is why I
Reza,
didn't
we
do
were
art.
loving
This is
that
why I'm
flow
not an
there, man.
artist. I didn't do art at GCSE.
We're loving the flow. But
Yeah.
Shabbar was giving you like a impressed epic side eye there.
Oh, yeah, I misread
I'm
the
just relaxed.
yeah.
I'm relaxed. I'm like, okay, yeah, we're nearly at half one.
Oh,
So yeah,
fantastic.
let's
Look, conscious of time, but Reza, thank you so
Exactly.
much. There's been a lot there, and maybe we can grab a summary and share it on the group after. And maybe in the future there could be some more drilled down workshops we can look at as well. But Shabbar, look, I'd love to bring you in now as well. So look, we've had the kind
keep
of
that on screen. Keep
Keep
that
on
on
screen.
screen.
All right,
Yeah,
all
just
right.
keep it on screen, because there's just a couple of things that I
I'm
can
looking
just
back on it now. It looks terrible.
No, it looks awesome, man. It looks awesome.
authentic.
Under pressure drawings. But yeah, Shabbar, please take us through now the more personal elements, and also if you could just include in there some self-employed considerations as well, because I know there might be some self-employed individuals out there on the group as well.
Yeah, okay. So just scrolling back up to the first sort of diagram that Reza drew, which, yeah, I mean, like, looking back at that, that's not going to make sense to anyone now. So I mean, all I would say is that for employers, one of the ways that they can mitigate the rise in employers' national insurance is getting their staff to uptake what's known as salary sacrifice. So just very briefly, salary sacrifice is, normally if you're an employee, you pay 5% of your salary, or 5% of your salary gets paid in to your pension, and your employer usually would put in 3%. Okay, so if you had a salary of 50,000, you would have, 5 grand would get taken, put into the pension, and you would pay your tax, national insurance, and your employer or the business owner would be paying into your pension, and he will also, or she will be paying employer's national insurance. But if you do what's known, let's say, called salary sacrifice, what you do is you accept a lower salary. Okay, so let's say you're earning 50,000. You've got 5,000 going into your pension as your normal contribution. But now, if you decide in agreement with your employer that they will still pay in the 5,000 for your contribution, so you're still getting your contribution, but you lower your salary to 45 grand. So you've taken a hit of 45 grand. What essentially happens is the way that it works out is that the net position is the same to you. Okay, and what you take home, the same goes into your pension. You've still got that 5 grand that you were paying in, but now your employer is putting it in on your behalf. But it lowers the tax bill for the employer, because now the employer is paying national insurance on a lower salary. So if you're a business owner, it could be a great way for you to offer salary sacrifice to your employees, because by lowering their salary, they're still getting the same net take home, the same amount going into their pension, but you're paying national insurance on a lower salary, and therefore saving money against, obviously, the rise in employers' NI. So I think that's a good hack for business owners. And maybe we can put up some examples on the KEO group of how it works, because it's nice just to see it in a table of before and after, right? And it's and some employers who are, very generous might even pass on some of those employer NI savings on to their employees in the form of boosting their pension contribution. So that used to happen in the past for a lot of our sort of clients. They would sort of ask their employer, hey, would you mind doing salary sacrifice, blah, 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 and will you pass on some of the savings that you're making? That happened in the past. Now, whether business owners are going to be that generous going forward, now they're getting hit a lot more, is up for debate, but definitely business owners need to look at that. Just to add on to sort of what Reza was saying in terms of like his diagram with the SAS, etc., the thing to also factor in is that when you put money into your pension, whether it's a SAS where you've got ultimate control, or even if it's your workplace pension as an employed, or if you're self-employed and you've just set up a SIP, which is a self-invested personal pension where you decide the funds that you choose, but you might not be able to buy property through that. You've just got to be aware that it's still a very tax efficient vehicle, because of the fact that you will be getting tax relief going in. Okay, so if, let's say, for example, you're a self-employed individual, I mean, Reza can sort of do the sort of the diagram bit here, but if you're self-employed and you've made self-employed profit of, let's say, you know, £75,000, you're kind of like £25,000 in the higher rate tax bracket, in terms of you'll be paying 40% on that balance between 50 and 25. But if you make a pension contribution, you can actually basically get back the higher rate tax that you're paying on that £25,000 by making a gross £25,000 contribution into your own personal pension. So that would allow you to sort of bring down your tax bill, but also the money will grow free of income tax and free of capital gains tax. So we mentioned at the beginning of this webinar about the CGT rises and all of the headache that comes with that. Well, if you've got money in a pension, and let's say, you know, you've amassed, you know, 20 grand of contributions during your lifetime, and over several decades that's grown to 100,000. Well, you don't pay any tax on the growth. Whereas if it wasn't in a pension, that 20 to 100, just like if your property went up from 20 to 100, you'd pay a capital gains tax on that portion of gain. Within the pension, you don't. And when you come to draw the money out of your pension, it is more favorable than the normal tax rates, because you get a certain amount tax-free, which is currently 25%. So these are little nuggets which really can help you lower your tax bill and provide for your future by just being smart with, you know, making pension contributions and taking advantage of the ability to claim back tax relief, grow your money tax-free. And we don't know if this is going to be around forever, right? The next thing to go could be the amount that you can put into pensions. So those are those are little things for the self-employed and business owners that I think just latch on to what, you know, Reza was doing there, which is all sort of solid advice. And yeah, we get involved with that for clients on a regular basis, especially the buying of your own premises. If you can do that, that's a real win, because it creates that circular flow of paying rent back to yourself. Yeah, so, you know, if you pay rent back to yourself, you're claiming it as an expense as a business owner, and then it's funding you for your retirement in a tax efficient way. So yeah, they're just a couple of things.
Shabbar, I've got a question for you.
Oh, don't make it a tricky one.
Now, I asked our pensions consultant this, and he kind of gave an answer that I didn't like. So I'm going to ask you.
Okay.
And the question is, can you buy crypto through your pension? Now, you can buy stocks and shares through your pension, but his view was, based on the Pensions Act at the moment, and given that, you know, crypto is deemed to be a risky asset, but you know, it's become mainstream. You've got the ETFs being approved. You've got, you know, BlackRock, etc., who are the largest asset manager in the world, who are now, you know, taking inflows of Bitcoin into their ETFs, and no doubt pension funds, etc., are now starting to allocate, you know, 0.5%, 1% of their funds and management into Bitcoin, because it's now become, you know, a $2 trillion asset. What's the view in the UK at the moment then, Shabbar? Can you shed some light on this?
Well, see, the thing is, so I don't believe that there are any regulated UK funds that have crypto. I think in the US. So I think that the problem is that, well, in my position as a regulated advisor, I can't advise on non-regulated investments. So for me, crypto is out. Whatever my personal view on it is, for clients, there isn't any way to incorporate that as part of their retirement plan or whatever work that we're doing for them. However, as soon as it's adopted as part of a regulated fund, I mean, automatically it, you know, once it's passed that test of a regulated fund, it's going to form part of a like you say, like, you know, an index fund that will invest in an element of crypto, or a managed fund, and then that I'm assuming would be perfectly acceptable to be held within any of the UK wrappers. Now the question then is, you know, if you've got a DIY investor, you know, they could go off and they could crack on and they could put 100% of their money in a crypto related fund, and you know, you live by the sword, die by the sword, effectively. You know, we'd have a decision to sort of look at that in terms of, you know, the asset, how speculative it is, and how we could build that into a portfolio for someone's retirement. Because our goal for retirement is to give the client the best chance of not running out of money. And in order to not run out of money, we need to make sure that we've calculated things and given the best probability of not running out of money. And with a speculative asset, you can't do that as effectively as you can with the weight of evidence that we've got and the data around, you know, stocks and shares, you know, property, government bonds, etc., which can give us a much more certain set of assumptions to make. So yeah, for now, no, can't look at it, but I think it's coming down the road. I think we've got to, you know, embrace it when it does.
Yeah, I mean, it's
decide.
taking your hat off as a regulated advisor and a very safe pair of hands. Based upon the legislation as it stands at the moment, let's say, you know, I have my SAS, right? So I'm the trustee, I'm in control of the investment decisions. I can buy, at the moment, you can buy works of art, right? Works of art are permissible investments for your pension. So is there anything stopping a trustee buying crypto? Is if I can buy a work of art, I can buy, you know, gold bars, and essentially Bitcoin is seen as a commodity now. So they tried to, you know, in the US, there was a big court case about it being categorized as a security. They lost. It's still categorized as a commodity. So is there anything that preventing a trustee from directly investing, rather than through a tracker fund or anything like that, but a direct investment into crypto?
So it's an interesting question. I don't know the answer because I don't get bogged down in I don't make the decisions of what assets can go into a SAS. So and I'm sure different SAS trustees will have a different take on whether they're going to allow an asset, because ultimately they're responsible to the pensions regulator, whether, you know, to determine whether an asset has been put into a pension legitimately or illegitimately. Because obviously, if it's illegitimate, then you've got to pay tax on it, right? So that's why even with certain commercial property, when there's a residential element, they're very cagey around obviously allowing certain types of property in. So yeah, I don't know. To be honest, at this moment in time, it's not something that is sort of overly pressing on sort of my end. And I think it's probably more the DIY investor that might want to sort of look into that. And if you do find a SAS trustee that accepts it, then it's on their head. So you know, you would be able to go with it. But ultimately, if it ends up being challenged, you'll end up paying the tax. So I think you've got to tread carefully.
Yeah. Problem is, I mean, we don't have external trustees. So as a SAS trustee, you're allowed to just be, we're the only trustees. So we're not, we need an administrator and make sure we're following the pensions code and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it's our decision based upon, you know, our view of risk reward and all that kind of stuff.
Certainly an interesting debate. And maybe again, that's something to sort of dig deeper. Now, look, I'm conscious of time. We've got about 5 minutes to go. I did want to jump into things like property and also transitioning out of the UK, because I think that the non-dom area as well has become quite interesting, shall we say. But I'm not sure we have enough time to really deep dive. But look, just a quick question that I had. We have a number of people who are now making that transition away from the UK into parts of the Middle East, parts of Europe, for a number of reasons. Is there any quick consideration tips that both of you would advise individuals looking at that transition in terms of how it impacts their tax planning?
Yeah, sure. Happy to take this one. We do a lot of this. So we help people to establish themselves in Dubai and then assist them with the whole process. And we are getting a lot of there's a lot of demand for this at the moment. We are probably shifting 3 to 4 people a month on this because it remains one of the very few ways and strategies of actually avoiding UK tax. But to be successful, what you need to do is actually break ties with the UK. So what that means is you've got to actually become non-resident in not just in kind of in substance. So you can't just, a lot of people think you can set up a company in Dubai and have money received there and not pay any tax. It doesn't work that way. If you're a UK individual, you are, and you're a UK resident, meaning that you're spending, most of the year, let's say, 9 months in the UK, you're taxed on worldwide income. So all three of us, we're here in the UK, on these shores, no matter where we earn income, whether I set up a company in Dubai, Cayman Islands, Montenegro, wherever, I am taxed on any income I get anywhere in the world because I'm in the UK. To break that, I can become non-resident somewhere else. So I've actually got to become non-resident, meaning I've got to leave the UK. I've got to actually establish residence, meaning I need to have accommodation. I've got to run my business abroad, things like that. So it's more than just number of days. It's actual cut ties with the UK, establish residence abroad. Typically, you can live there, have your doctor there, have your license there, have your kids there if you've got family, etc. And then if you manage to break ties with the UK, then yes, you can pay 0% tax if you go to a jurisdiction which is tax-free, like Dubai is income tax-free at the moment. There is some corp tax, but Dubai, most Middle Eastern countries don't have income tax yet, so you're not paying any tax. And then you can have a business in the UK still, and it pays you dividends from the UK. And if I'm in Dubai, I can receive those income tax free as well. So yes, this is one of very few planning opportunities. If that is something on your mind, if you're sick of the UK, sick of the tax burden, sick of the weather, sick of the dirty toilets, then yeah, it's open to you to move abroad, establish yourselves in Dubai, Doha, Singapore, Hong Kong, any one of those Cayman Islands jurisdictions to escape UK taxes. But I do seek advice, but it is possible to do so.
Fantastic. Shabbar, anything to add?
No, not really.
Okay, no, that's fine. Perfect. Thank you, Reza. So look, we've come to an end, and I'm conscious I want to keep within our time limit. So look, just to finish off, if anyone wants to reach out to you, to seek further advice or engage yourselves, give me a quick idea of what's the best channels to get hold of you guys. So Shabbar, do you want to go first?
So yeah, they can just reach out through KEO. I'm on there, so just send me a message, or look up the website Lumos Financial. You can see LUMOS Financial, and you can send me a message through the website. But yeah, I think WhatsApp, KEO, probably the best.
Perfect. And Reza?
Best place to get me is on LinkedIn. If you would like to reach out to someone on my team, then you can go to our website. I'll put the link in the chat. If you want a consultation or anything around property, non-residence, anything like that to do with your business saving tax, then yeah, feel free to apply for a call through our website.
Fantastic. Guys, I really appreciate your time. I know you're both very busy individuals, so thank you for making time to share with us. There's been great benefits. I'm sure everyone has benefited. We'll be posting this recording out onto KEO as well. And yeah, if anyone has any questions, I know we haven't had questions in the chat here, but if you do have questions, feel free to funnel them through to myself or onto KEO. We can pass them on, and maybe we can do a Q&A to efficiently answer them all. But look, it's been great catching up. Inshallah, obviously, we're hoping to see you again soon in the future, adding more value. But yeah, keep being epic, and thank you so much for your time, guys.
Khudafis. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you,
Have a good one.
Samir. Take care.
Khudafis.
Office.